Dawn crept slowly over the edge of the thatched rooftops, its pale light filtering through the low mist that clung stubbornly to the muddy road outside. Before the roosters had even begun their broken crowing, I was already awake, my body accustomed to the rhythm of long days and short nights. Running an inn in the middle of a bustling medieval crossroads was not a gentle life, but it was a profitable one, provided one had the patience, the endurance, and the stomach to handle everything from drunken merchants to muddy peasants, from gossiping travelers to the occasional nobleman who preferred anonymity under a hooded cloak. My day always began the same way, with the soft groan of wooden floorboards beneath my bare feet as I descended from my cramped loft to the main hall below. The common room, still heavy with the scent of last night's smoke and spilled ale, was dim and quiet, the embers in the great hearth only faintly glowing. I stirred them gently, adding a new log so the fire could warm the hall before travelers awoke. A warm hearth was the heart of an inn. Without it, guests grew restless, and restless guests were trouble. The first task was bread. My wife had already risen and was kneading dough in the kitchen, her hands swift and practiced, dusted with the familiar white flour that coated the table and drifted in the air like the softest winter snow. I prepared the remaining stew from the previous night, adding fresh onions and barley, stretching it just enough to feed the hungry crowd expected by midday. Waste not, want not. Food was expensive, and travelers were unpredictable. As the sun lifted higher, the inn began to stir. A pair of merchants came down first, yawning loudly, their silk purses clinking faintly with coin. They grumbled about road tolls and thieves while demanding breakfast, and I served them steaming bowls of stew and coarse bread. Next came a young couple traveling on foot, exhausted and shyly thankful for a warm place to sleep. Then a group of pilgrims, wearing badges of distant shrines, their sandals still caked with dust from the long road. Everyone had a story, but most preferred their privacy, and I had long ago learned that an innkeeper hears much, but repeats little. By midday, the inn transformed into a hive of noise and motion. The smell of roasting meat filled the hall. Children laughed or cried. Dogs barked under the tables, and tankards clattered against worn wooden surfaces. I moved among the crowd with well-practiced ease, collecting coins, breaking up arguments, serving ale, and keeping a wary eye on the door. Inns were crossroads not only of roads but of lives, and with so many lives intersecting, tension was inevitable. A drunk might decide that someone had insulted him. A merchant might accuse a rival of cheating. A wandering bard might charm the wrong woman. I kept peace where I could, and where I could not, my staff helped escort troublemakers outside to sleep off their foolishness in the mud. Yet despite the chaos, there were moments of quiet. Sometimes I stepped outside to check the stables, where the smell of hay and horses replaced the din of the inn. I would run my hands along the worn wood of the stalls, listen to the soft munching of the animals, and breathe a moment's peace. But peace never lasted long. A new wagon would roll in, wheels screeching. A noble's herald might announce an unexpected arrival, or a weary traveler, collapsing from the cold, would need immediate attention. Evening brought a second rush, miners from the nearby hills, farmers from the surrounding fields, and travelers seeking shelter before darkness swallowed the countryside. Lanterns flickered golden light across the beams overhead. Music drifted from a bard's lute, and laughter rose like smoke. The inn became warm, loud, alive, a place of refuge in a dangerous world. Night came slowly but heavily. As the last guests stumbled to their rooms or collapsed onto benches, I moved through the hall extinguishing candles and sweeping stray crumbs into the fire. The day's earnings were counted carefully, coin by coin, and stored away in the heavy chest near my bed. Running in meant profit, yes, but danger too. Thieves watched closely, and one careless night could ruin everything. At last, when silence settled and only the soft crackle of the dying hearth remained, I climbed back to the loft. My bones ached, my clothes smelled of smoke and ale, but the sense of satisfaction was undeniable. Tomorrow would be the same. Hard, loud, unpredictable, but it would be mine, shaped by my hands, my choices, my endurance. And as sleep finally claimed me, I knew that in this world of kings and wars, plague and pilgrimage, shifting faiths and uncertain futures, my little one stood firm, a small but vital hearth in the long, winding story of medieval life. The morning in your inn begins long before most of the village even stirs. After tending to the hearth, checking the barrels, and making a mental list of what repairs must be addressed before the day grows hectic, you step outside beneath the cool gray sky. Thin mist still clings to the ground, curling around the wooden posts and the cobblestones, giving the world a muted quietness that feels almost sacred. For a moment, you savor it. The stillness, the absence of voices, the small illusion that time itself holds its breath for you. But the road never sleeps for long. From the distance, the first soft echoes of hoofbeats reach your ears. Sometimes it is a lone rider returning from distant lands, their cloaks stiff with frost or dust. Other times a caravan appears, merchants pulling carts loaded with salted meats, pottery, furs, bolts of cloth, or, on lucky days, rare spices whose scent lingers long after they've passed. Today seems to be one of those busier mornings. A pair of riders break through the mist first, guiding their weary horses toward your inn's courtyard. Behind them, a wagon creaks, its wheels crunching against gravel. The rhythm of travel, familiar and steady. You straighten the sign hanging over your doorway and prepare a welcoming nod. Travelers bring coin, and coin keeps the inn's roof repaired, the hearth stocked, the table sturdy, and your pantry full, most of the time at least. As they dismount, their expressions tell stories long before their tongues do. Exhaustion from weeks on the road, relief at finding shelter, uncertainty about what news awaits them in the settlements ahead. Inside, you guide them toward the warmth of the fire still burning from dawn. Here is where your day truly begins. You fetch water, pour ale, and prepare bread and cheese. The inn grows louder, filled now with murmured conversations, some hushed, some bright, and others carrying the tension of distant wars, rising taxes, or bandits spotted near the old Roman road. A merchant spreads maps on the table, tracing routes with ink-stained fingers. A traveling monk warms his hands by the fire, whispering prayers as he removes his damp cloak. A pair of guardsmen argue about the condition of their boots. And all the while, you move between your guests like a quiet conductor, maintaining the delicate harmony of a space where strangers gather yet must not quarrel. There are always challenges. The drunk who thinks dawn is a fine time to start trouble. The miser who grumbles over prices. The nobleman's servant demanding special treatment. Or the hungry traveler who cannot pay in coin but offers labor or a trinket in exchange. Each one requires wisdom, patience, and the ability to read a room quickly. Skills you've sharpened across years of running this place. By mid-morning, the inn feels alive. The mist has burned away outside, and sunlight spills through the doorway, marking the shift from the quiet solitude of dawn to the busy hum of the day. The row beyond your courtyard is in full swing. Carts rolling, chickens squawking, blacksmiths hammering, villagers shouting greetings. Your inn, once a silent building of wood and stone, is now a crossroads of stories once again. And you, as always, stand at the center of it. By the time the sun has climbed high enough to burn away the last shreds of morning mist, your inn has transformed from a quiet refuge of weary travelers into the bustling heart of the village's midday life. You stand in the center of it all, part conductor, part servant, part guardian of order, while the world churns around you in uneven, unpredictable waves. This is the rhythm you know best, the rhythm that has shaped your bones and etched permanent lines of fatigue across your face. But it's also the rhythm that keeps your inn alive, respected, and visited by all manner of souls from fields, forests, cities, and occasionally far beyond. You begin by tightening your apron, wiping your hands on the canvas cloth hanging from your belt, and stepping into the main hall, where noise grows like a storm gathering strength. The tables, rough, heavy, scarred by years of tankards slamming down and knives carving idle patterns, are filling fast. Farmhands and shepherds arrive from the western fields, smelling of hay and damp wool. A few peddlers drift in as well, their carts left outside under the oak tree, shouting for customers even as they order ale. At the long table near the window, a group of young villagers argue about grain taxes and the Lord's new hunting rules. Their voices rise and fall like waves crashing against a rocky shore. You don't intervene, not yet. Arguments in your inn are like sparks from the hearth, common, mostly harmless, occasionally dangerous, but usually dying out on their own. Instead, you lift a pitcher of ale and begin filling mugs, one after the other, the liquid sloshing with a rich amber glow. Your arms move without thinking. Trained by years of repetition, you know exactly how full each patron likes their mug, how much foam they want, whether they prefer to drink in silence or in noisy companionship. These details matter. They keep people returning. The smell of midday stew fills the air. Barley, onions, rabbit meat if luck is good, root vegetables if luck is not. Behind you, your wife stirs the cauldron with a long wooden paddle, lifting it occasionally to test the thickness. She hardly needs to speak. You read her movements the way a knight reads battlefield signals. When she raises her brow, you know she needs salt. When she shifts her weight from one foot to another, the fire needs more logs. You respond instinctively, handing her whatever she requires before she even asks. A pair of mercenaries enter next, their cloaks ragged, their boots caked in dried mud. They walk with the kind of confidence only men who understand violence possess. You eye them carefully. Their hands rest near their belts, not exactly threatening, but ready. They choose a corner table, backs to the wall, faces scanning the room as though expecting trouble to burst in at any moment. You know their type. They've been on long roads, carried heavy swords, seen things best forgotten. They need warmth, food, and a quiet place, but they'll never say so outright. You approach them calmly, offering bread and ale. They respond with curt nods. For now, that's enough. Outside, the village square grows louder. Children chase chickens through the dust. A pair of priests argue near the well about the date of a holy feast. A cart breaks one of its wheels, and the driver curses loudly enough that several townsfolk turn their heads. All of this drifts through your open door, weaving into the tapestry of sound that defines midday in your inn. Then comes the commotion. It begins with a shout, one of the farmhands knocking over a mug, which splashes ale across two other men. Voices rise, a chair scrapes back violently, and three men stand at once. You sigh and step forward. This is your home, your livelihood, and your territory. You do not allow brawls unless absolutely unavoidable. And even then, you try to ensure they happen outside, where your tables won't break and your floor won't stain with blood. You plant yourself between the men, hands raised, voice firm but calm. Easy now. There's stew coming, and more ale if you've the coin. No sense wasting energy on bruises you can't afford. For a moment, tension lingers like a drawn bowstring. Then one man laughs, the spell breaks, and the others return to their seats. Crisis avoided for now. You allow yourself a brief exhale, the kind that feels like a reward in a day full of thankless effort. But there's no time to rest. A traveler enters, a scholar, by the look of him. Thin, pale, wrapped in a robe that has seen better days. He carries a satchel stuffed with parchment and ink, and his eyes dart around the inn as though searching for danger and inspiration in equal measure. He orders warm cider and sits near the hearth. As you bring him his drink, he asks about old legends, ghosts in the woods, forgotten ruins in the hills, lost kings whose bones still lie under stone circles. You answer what you know, embellish what you don't, and enjoy the brief moment of storytelling, even as trays and tankards wait behind you. Soon after, a local noble's steward arrives with 2 guards. The room quiets. The steward is a thin man with sharp features, the kind who never smiles except when something displeases him. He requests wine and a private corner. You bring it to him with careful hands. Nobles are like fires. They bring warmth and wealth, but touch them wrong and you'll burn. You overhear bits of their conversation. New road taxes, increased patrol routes, rumors of bandits forming a camp near the river. Such worries drift into your mind, but find no space to stay. You have enough concerns of your own. Throughout all this, you move constantly. You serve bowls of stew thick enough to stand a spoon in. You refill mugs, replace candles, sweep up spilled grain, and answer the endless stream of questions from travelers and villagers alike. Your voice grows hoarse, your shoulders ache, and sweat dampens your collar. But there's a strange comfort in the exhaustion, a rhythm you've known since childhood. A group of young musicians arrives next, carrying pipes and small drums. You grant them space near the hearth, and soon their lively playing fills the inn with warmth that even fire cannot provide. Patrons tap their feet, laugh more easily, and release some of the burdens they carried through the door. Music has always been magic in its own way, and your inn becomes its vessel. As afternoon dies into early evening, shadows lengthen across the floor. The crowd thins as workers return to fields or homes. You take a moment, just a moment, to stand by the doorway and breathe in the cooling air. The sky shifts from blue to gold to the soft gray of approaching dusk. A few stars begin to appear. A faint breeze rustles the thatched roofs of neighboring houses. Inside, your wife cleans the cauldron, while your eldest daughter wipes down tables. Your son stacks firewood near the hearth. The inn is not quiet, not truly, but its heartbeat slows. You feel the weight of the day settling over you like a thick wool cloak. There will be another rush when evening travelers arrive, seeking warmth, food, stories, and a place to sleep. But for now, you stand between the chaos of the midday rush and the uncertainties of nightfall, holding everything together with calloused hands and stubborn resolve. This is your life. This is your world. And in its own exhausting, relentless way, it is home. By midday, the inn is no longer mine alone. The quiet hours of dawn vanish like breath on cold glass, replaced by the steady hum of life as merchants, travelers, and villagers drift in from the muddy road outside. The door opens and closes so often that I stop noticing the creak. It becomes part of the rhythm of the day, like the crackle of the hearth or the clatter of wooden cups against worn tabletops. The air thickens with smells, simmering barley stew, damp cloaks drying by the fire, the earthy scent of wool and leather, and the faint sweetness of ale leaking from unwashed tankards. I move through it all with practiced steps, the floorboards beneath my boots groaning in the same familiar protest they've given for years. Some patrons greet me by name, others grunt and nod, or ignore me entirely, wrapped in the fatigue of travel. It makes little difference. By noon, my role shifts from keeper to caretaker, making sure no one starves, no one freezes, and no one starts a fight before they've paid their bill. I refill bowls, drag extra benches to crowded tables, shout toward the kitchen for more bread, then carry out whatever my wife manages to pull from the stove without scorching. A pair of traveling stonemasons argue over the cost of repairs in a nearby town, their voices rising with each tankard drained. At another table, a pilgrim rubs his blistered feet, wincing with every movement as he tries to look pious, while devouring stew like a starving wolf. A young couple sits near the window, whispering and laughing as if the whole world has shrunk to the wooden bench beneath them. The noise grows, then fades, then swells again, a tide I have long since learned not to fight. I lift mugs, wipe down tables, fetch more firewood, tighten the rope on a drafty shutter, and answer the same questions I've been asked 1,000 times. How far to the next village? Is the road safe? Where can a man find work? Is the ale strong? Every hour blurs into the next. But even within this monotony, I know the patterns well enough to anticipate what's coming. By mid-afternoon, the crowd usually thins. Those who came for food leave to finish their errands, and those who arrived early for drink are too deep in their cups to do much more than mumble into their sleeves. I take advantage of the lull, wiping spills, clearing plates, scraping ashes, and preparing for the evening rush that is sure to be worse than the morning. Still, there are moments, small, easily missed, when the sun slips through the window just right, catching the drifting dust in a golden haze, or when a brief silence settles over the room, warm and soft as wool. Moments when I feel, despite the ache in my shoulders, that this place is something like a heartbeat in the village. Steady, constant, necessary. But peace never lasts long in a tavern. Chairs scrape, doors open, new faces appear, tired from travel or eager for trouble. And I, with my apron stained anew and my sleeves rolled high, return once more to my endless routine, the work that shapes my days as surely as the hammer shapes the blacksmith's iron. As the afternoon sunlight slants through the wooden beams of the tavern's upper windows, the mood within my establishment shifts in a way that is almost ritualistic. The lunch bustle fades, the clatter of pottery grows distant, and a strange quiet settles in. A quiet filled not with peace, but with anticipation. This is the hour when the tavern stops being merely a place of food and rest and starts becoming something more treacherous, a meeting ground for secrets. By now, after years of running this place, I have gained a reputation. Not the kind a man would openly brag about. No, mine is a quieter, heavier sort of reputation, shaped not by choice but by necessity. People think I hear things, that I know who comes and goes, who whispers to whom, which travelers bring only stories, and which bring trouble. Perhaps this is true, but reputation is a double-edged blade. It draws coins, yes, but it also draws eyes, some of which I wish would never look in my direction. Today is no different. Even before the sun fully dips, the tavern has begun attracting figures who prefer the half-light. Hooded riders, cloaked traders, a monk whose robes are too new for a story, and a pair of mercenaries who sit with their backs to the wall, their hands always close to the hilts of their worn swords. These are not the cheerful, hungry crowds of the morning. These people carry tension with them like a second cloak. Yet, as the host, I move among them calmly, refilling mugs, offering bread, collecting coins, pretending not to notice the way they watch each other, pretending not to hear the soft barbs hidden inside their murmured conversations, pretending not to feel the way the air thickens with unspoken intent. I keep my face neutral, my tone even, my footsteps steady, as though ignorance could shield me from danger. But the truth is, I know more than I should. Running a medieval inn is as much about survival as it is about hospitality. I must balance on a fragile line between knowing enough to protect myself and knowing so much that people begin to fear me. One misstep, one wrong word to the wrong person, and the tavern I have built could become my grave. As I wipe the counter with a damp cloth, a young stable hand slips in, his face pale, his breath quick. He leans close to me, not out of affection, but because he does not want to be overheard. "They're asking about you," he whispers. "The riders from the east." I do not respond. Not with fear, not with anger. I simply nod, as though he had told me something mundane, like a spilled ale or a loose hinge on the stable door. Inside, however, I feel a slow tightening, like a rope pulled quietly around my throat. Still, I continue working. I serve the riders when they enter, their boots muddy, their cloaks trimmed with dust from long roads. I greet them with the same practiced warmth I offer every traveler. And though their eyes search mine with an unsettling sharpness, I reveal nothing, because in this era, in this world, knowledge is currency, but silence is armor. And so the tavern lives on for another hour, another night, because I know when to speak, and when not to. As the night deepens and the world outside the inn grows quieter, I begin the slow, deliberate shift into the part of the day that truly tests a tavern keeper's endurance. The rowdy clamor that filled the hall earlier settles into a low, intermittent murmur as most travelers retire to their rooms, leaving behind only the diehards, men who sit hunched over their ale cups, unwilling to face the cold outside or the solitude of sleep. I move between the remaining tables, wiping away the puddles of spilled drink and gathering half-finished trenchers of bread and roasted meat. Each corner of the inn feels different at night. Shadows stretch longer. The fire sags into glowing embers, and the scent of smoke hangs thicker in the rafters. This is the hour when I must be most attentive, for it is in silence that trouble likes to bloom. A whispered argument between two merchants, a poor traveler who has drunk more than his purse can justify, a stranger staring too long at the coin pouch of another. These things can erupt suddenly and violently if left unchecked. I keep a steady hand and a calm voice, stepping in with practiced ease whenever tensions rise. A single warning glance from me, forged by years of running this place, is often enough to smooth frayed tempers. After all, the inn is neutral ground, and even the roughest men understand that a warm roof and a hot meal are privileges best not jeopardized. Near the hearth, I add another log to the fire, listening to the crackle as sparks leap upward like tiny fireflies. The warmth is a comfort against the draft that creeps under the door whenever the wind picks up. Outside, the winter air howls through the streets, rattling loose shutters and making the signboard creak on its hinges. I imagine the dark road between villages, empty except for the occasional patrol or a lonely peddler caught by the cold. Nights like this remind me why travelers seek refuge here, and why I must remain awake. In the kitchen, I begin preparing for the next morning. A fresh batch of dough is kneaded and set aside to rise. Herbs are sorted, dried, and tied into bundles. Leftover bones from the day's meals are boiled into a thick broth that will serve as tomorrow's stew base. Every task has its rhythm, and within that rhythm I often find a strange peace. Though fatigue pulls at my limbs, this part of the night is mine, quiet, methodical, purposeful. From time to time, I check on the lodgers upstairs. Some sleep soundly, others toss restlessly, muttering in their dreams. The wooden floorboards creak softly under my feet as I make my rounds with a small lantern in hand, casting warm circles of light across shuttered rooms and heavy beams. The smell of old timber, wool blankets, and cooling hearthstone feels familiar, almost comforting. Just before midnight, a lone traveler knocks at the door, soaked from the rain, shivering beneath a thick cloak. I open the door, letting the warmth spill out into the night, and beckon him inside. His eyes reflect both exhaustion and relief. Moments like this remind me of my purpose, to be the keeper of a haven in a world where safety is never guaranteed. When the last guest has either left or retired, and the fire dwindles to a faint glow, I sit for a moment behind the counter, rubbing the stiffness from my hands. My ledger lies open, and glistening under lantern light as I note expenses, payments, and supplies that must be restocked. Running an inn is not merely serving ale and offering beds. It is a constant balancing act, requiring patience, resolve, and endless vigilance. And as the night reaches its deepest, heaviest hours, I embrace the stillness. For this is the life I chose. A life lived between flickering lanterns and wandering souls, between the noise of day and the secrets of night. A life where every sunrise brings new faces, new stories, and new burdens to shoulder. As the final traces of daylight fade beyond the distant tree-lane, a deeper quiet begins to settle over the tavern, one that feels almost heavy in my chest. The road outside grows still, muffled by the cold creeping in from the north, and the warm haze of the hearth becomes the only true sanctuary for any soul still wandering through the countryside at this hour. Inside, the tavern transforms, from a chaotic hub of noise and motion to a dim, breathing space echoing with only the softest remnants of earlier clamor. The last few patrons nurse their drinks more slowly now, speaking in hushed tones that blend with the crackle of the fireplace and the gentle creak of wood contracting in the night chill. I move through the room with deliberate, almost ritualistic calmness, clearing empty mugs, wiping down tables still sticky from spilled ale, and banking the fire so its warmth will last until dawn. Each task, though mundane, carries a sense of necessity that only a tavern keeper truly understands. This place doesn't simply run. It must be tended, nurtured, and protected. Every corner must be checked, every candle trimmed, every shutter latched. A single oversight, an ember left too close to timber, a drunkard left sleeping unattended, a door left slightly ajar, can turn a night peaceful into a night disastrous. Outside the entrance, the cold air bites at my skin as I toss a bucket of leftover dishwater into the dirt path. The stars above shine fiercely, unobscured by clouds, while the moon hangs low and swollen, illuminating the rooftops and casting long shadows across the courtyard. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf's howl rides the wind, reminding me of how thin the walls truly are between civilization and wilderness. I secure the latch a bit tighter when I step back inside. The remaining travelers prepare to depart, drawing hoods over their heads and tightening cloaks against the frost. I bid them safe journeys, and though some answer with gratitude, others only grunt, lost in their own weary thoughts. Once the last of them steps out and the door closes, a profound silence fills the tavern. It is the hour when solitude becomes almost tangible, when the building itself seems to settle, and my own thoughts grow louder than the room around me. I take a seat near the fire, easing the weight from my legs. The flames paint shifting patterns on the stone floor, and for a moment I allow myself to drift, thinking of the years spent tending this place, not of luxury or choice, but of duty, survival, and perhaps even a strange affection. I think of the countless travelers passing through, each leaving behind fragments of stories I will never hear fully. I wonder where they are now, what dangers they face on roads I cannot see, and whether my food or my fire gave them even a sliver of strength for the journey ahead. But the quiet hours are not entirely peaceful. This is when I take stock, literally and metaphorically. I check the pantry shelves, counting loaves, noting how many barrels remain unspoiled, estimating how much ale can last through the week. I scrape hardened wax from candle holders and trim the wicks for tomorrow. I sweep the hearthstones and shake soot from my apron. These tasks, though draining, give structure to the long nights and keep the tavern alive another day. Before turning in, I step outside once more, leaning against the doorway as I breathe in the sharp, cold air. A thin mist crawls across the ground, and the moon casts a pale glow on the empty road. For a moment, I simply stand there, listening for dangers, for travelers approaching, or for anything that might disturb the uneasy peace. Only when I am certain the night is stable do I retreat back inside. As I extinguish the lanterns one by one, shadows stretch across the floorboards, and the tavern finally falls dark. I whisper a small, habitual prayer for the safety of the building and for the warmth to last until morning. Then, with aching feet and the weight of responsibility still lingering on my shoulders, I climb the narrow stairs to my modest sleeping quarters. The night closes behind me, cold, quiet, and watchful. Hazurson section 7 al devam et abilarum. Sunadidin Jerusalem chat. Elbet section 6 metnini. Ansiki still vi usenlut tatarlagini careerak yatsiorum. Section 6. The weight of responsibility as night falls. As the sun sinks beyond the horizon and the last ribbons of gold withdraw from the sky, the tavern's interior seems to fold into a quieter, deeper kind of warmth, one built not by noise or bustle, but by the glowing coals on the hearth and the soft crackle of slowly burning logs. This is the hour when the responsibilities you carry shift shape. They do not lessen. They simply become more introspective, more entwined with thought than with physical demands. A medieval innkeeper's day may begin with motion and labor, but it ends with reflection and vigilance. You walk along the main hall, your hand gliding over the worn wooden tables, polished by decades of travelers' elbows, spilled ale, and laughter. You check each candle, trimming wicks, making sure no flame is left to burn too low or too high. Fire is comfort, but fire is also danger, especially in a timber-built tavern like yours. Every medieval innkeeper learns early that the night is as much about preventing disaster as it is about offering warmth. Outside, the village settles into its own rhythm, distant dogs barking, carts returning late from the fields, the soft bells of a passing trader arriving behind schedule. Some nights carry danger, bandits on the forest roads, drunken feuds bubbling into violence, or suspicious strangers who seem to speak too little yet observe too much. You've seen all of these before. Experience has taught you that an innkeeper is not merely a merchant. You are a watcher, a mediator, a keeper of the fragile peace that exists between wandering souls. As more guests arrive, hungry and road-worn, you serve steaming bowls of stew, coarse bread, and meat. Their stories fill the air, talk of failing harvests, of local feuds, of kings demanding higher taxes, of crusades brewing in the distance. You listen, not because you must, but because information is your currency. Knowing who is angry, who is desperate, who is lying, and who is frightened keeps your tavern safe. It keeps you alive. Later, when the meals are served and mugs refilled, you retreat briefly to the storeroom. You take count of your remaining supplies: sacks of barley, wheels of cheese aging on wooden racks, bundles of herbs meant to flavor both food and remedies. Inventory is the unseen toil of tavern life. Your guests see abundance, but only because you manage scarcity with care. The winter months, especially, demand foresight. You return to the hall and observe the crowd. A pair of travelers whisper over a map. A local farmer dozes near the fireplace. A bard tunes his lute, preparing to earn a few coins by lifting the room's spirit. These scenes are familiar, yet each night you sense the subtle differences. The way tensions rise before festivals or taxes. The way certain faces appear anxious on the eve of a storm. The way your regulars change with the ebb and flow of fortune. When the bard finally begins to play, his melody weaves between conversations like a ribbon of color. For a moment, the tavern feels like the heart of the entire village, a place suspended between hardship and hope. You lean against the wooden counter, breathing in the scent of spiced ale and burning pine, and let the music soften the weight on your shoulders. This, too, is part of your duty, to create a refuge where people can forget the harshness of medieval life, even if only for a night. But rest for you is still far off. Long after the last mug is emptied and the final guest climbs the creaking stairs to their rented room, you remain awake. You secure shutters, reinforce the door bolts, bank the fire for safety, and make one final walk around the building with a lantern in hand. The night belongs to thieves and misfortune, and you refuse to let either creep into your domain. Only when everything is silent, when footsteps fade above, when the hearth glows like a sleeping beast, and when the wind quiets outside, do you feel the day's tension loosen. You pour yourself a small cup of watered wine, sit alone at a corner table, and savor a moment that no one else sees. The life of a medieval tavern keeper is never simple. It is a life built on vigilance, generosity, instinct, and endurance. But as you listen to the fading embers and the deep stillness of the night, you know that you would not trade it for anything. Your tavern is not merely a business. It is your world, your responsibility, and the place where countless stories begin and end under your roof. The night stretches deeper, heavy with the stillness that precedes the small hours. The tavern rests in a fragile equilibrium. The hearth's coals glow orange and red, throwing dancing light across the timber walls and the worn stone floor. Outside, the wind sighs softly through the village lanes, carrying the occasional bark of a dog or the creak of a cart returning from the fields. Every sound is sharpened in the quiet, every movement, even a shadow, worthy of notice. You make a round through the upper floor where the guest rooms are lined in simple order. One by one, you check doors, ensuring bolts are secured, that no window is ajar. Even the slightest lapse could invite misfortune. Thieves, stray animals, or worse, wandering travelers with ill intent. Every room is empty now, save for the occasional softly snoring guest, and each step you take on the creaking boards reminds you of the fragile peace that exists here. Returning to the main hall, you pour yourself another small cup of watered wine, letting the warmth spread through your chest. The night is long, and sleep is a luxury you cannot yet afford. Behind every flickering shadow in the corner of the room, you sense the necessity of readiness. Vigilance is part of survival, and survival is part of your duty. A sudden noise makes you pause. A soft scraping at the back door. Your hand rests lightly on the handle of a small dagger hidden at your belt. A precaution, not a provocation. Quietly, you move to investigate, slipping into the hallway that connects the kitchen and storage rooms. The sound comes again, followed by a faint whispering voice. You freeze, listening, eyes scanning for movement in the dim lantern light. A hooded figure emerges, startled at your presence. They carry no weapon, and their posture suggests fear rather than aggression. You recognize a wandering scholar, one who had arrived earlier in the day, seeking a quiet place to rest and write by candlelight. Relief floods your chest, though it is tempered by the awareness that danger in a village rarely announces itself so politely. "Forgive me." A The scholar whispers, bowing slightly. I could not sleep, and your tavern is the only light for miles. You nod, gesturing toward an empty corner table. Be cautious. Night brings many eyes. The hearth is warm, but vigilance is required even here. As the scholar settles, you watch over the hall, noting movements and listening to the soft murmurs of the remaining guests. A farmer shifts restlessly, muttering under his breath about the upcoming harvest. A traveling merchant carefully counts his coins before nodding to the bartender for another drink. Each gesture, each whisper, carries meaning. Tales of anxiety, of hope, of secret worries that do not yet belong to the night, but to the coming day. Hours pass, and the bard finally begins to play. His lute sings out notes of comfort and melancholy, weaving through the conversations like threads of color and warmth. You lean against the counter, eyes scanning, ears tuned to every word and every sound. Even music does not erase the need for attention. It simply masks it under a softer tone. The village breathes through your tavern tonight, and you, as always, are its careful steward. Outside, the wind rises slightly, rattling shutters and bending the thin branches of nearby trees. You sense the subtle shift in rhythm. The night is not yet over, and caution must remain. Returning to the storeroom, you check the supplies once more. The barley sacks, the cheese wheels, the herbs, and the preserved meats. You catalog mentally what is sufficient, what must be rationed, what must be reordered. Planning for scarcity is as much a part of your duty as tending the fire or serving guests. The final hours approach, and the last guest retires. You extinguish excess candles, bank a hearth, and make one last careful circuit. Every bolt, every shutter, every plank of timber is accounted for. Only when the tavern is silent do you allow yourself a moment of reprieve. Sitting at a corner table, you pour another small cup of wine, savoring it quietly, knowing that these small, unseen rituals of solitude are essential to sustain the weight of responsibility. As you sip, your thoughts wander to the village beyond your walls. The farmers in their fields, the traders on their paths, the children whose laughter once filled these lanes. They are all part of a delicate balance. Your tavern is not just a place of commerce, but a hub of observation, a microcosm of the wider world. Its walls contain stories, secrets, and the invisible threads that hold society together. Each night reinforces your understanding. Vigilance is not merely defensive, it is active engagement, shaping the small universe under your care. When dawn finally touches the horizon, you stand at the threshold, watching the first ribbons of light gild the timbered roofs. The village stirs, and you prepare once more. The hearth is rekindled, tables are arranged, the doors unlocked to welcome travelers. Another day begins, but your understanding of night's lessons carries forward. Experience has taught you that every sunrise is not merely a passage of time. It is the continuation of a cycle, a renewal of responsibilities, a fresh stage for the unfolding stories you steward. And so, with careful hands, watchful eyes, and an unwavering sense of duty, you begin again. The life of a medieval tavern keeper is unglamorous, challenging, and ceaseless, but it is yours. In the warmth of firelight and the quiet of vigilance, you find purpose, and in the safety and comfort you provide, countless others find refuge. The night has passed, but its lessons endure, woven into the rhythm of your days and the stories that unfold under your roof. The first rays of dawn filter through the narrow windows of the tavern, gilding the timber beams with a soft golden hue. The village beyond begins to stir. Chickens cluck in the yards, carts creak along cobbled lanes, and the faint cries of children echo from a nearby alley. You stand behind the counter, brushing crumbs from the worn surface, taking in the calm before the daily storm. Another day begins, yet you know that no 2 days are truly alike. Each holds the potential for misfortune, for laughter, for intrigue, and for quiet heroism. You step into the main hall, running your hand over the polished tables as your eyes sweep across the space. The hearth still smolders from last night's fire, its coals glowing faintly, a reminder that the warmth of your tavern is both a comfort and a responsibility. You adjust the iron grate and add fresh logs, mindful that the rhythm of fire and smoke must be maintained with precision. For a medieval innkeeper, vigilance is constant. Warmth cannot be assumed, nor safety taken for granted. The door swings open, letting in a gust of crisp morning air, carrying the sense of the village, fresh bread baking, hay from nearby fields, the tang of river water. A small group of villagers enters first, faces lined with the fatigue and hope of the early day. You greet each warmly, offering bowls of porridge, mugs of watered ale, and plates of bread still warm from the hearth. Politeness is not merely etiquette here. It is a tool of observation, a way to gauge moods, fears, and desires that may influence the quiet equilibrium of the tavern. As the breakfast service unfolds, you move among the tables with practiced ease. You note subtle details. A farmer's hand trembles slightly as he pours ale. A merchant's gaze lingers too long on the coin pouch at his belt. A traveling scholar furrows his brow over an open scroll. Each gesture is a story, a clue, a thread you can follow to ensure order and safety. The tavern is not simply a place of sustenance. It is a stage where human emotion and ambition are performed daily, and you are both audience and guardian. By mid-morning, the room is bustling. More travelers arrive, some weary from long journeys along dusty roads, others anxious, seeking news or refuge. You offer food and drink, but also listen. The murmurs, the subtle disagreements, the quiet confessions whispered between bites of bread. This information is invaluable, for in the microcosm of your tavern lies the reflection of the wider world. You are attuned to it, noticing patterns that might escape even the keenest eyes outside your walls. Outside, the village square is alive with motion. Horses are led to the stables, carts unload their goods, and street traders call to one another, their voices carrying across the morning air. From your vantage behind the counter, you can watch the comings and goings without ever leaving the safety of your domain. You understand that the tavern serves as a lens on the world, a place where rumors are born, alliances formed, and even small conflicts resolved before they escalate. As the sun climbs higher, a group of merchants and travelers convene near the fireplace. One produces a parchment map, pointing out routes and discussing dangers along the roads ahead. Bandit activity in the forests, rumors of soldiers requisitioning supplies, reports of disease spreading from a distant town. You listen carefully, noting which travelers show genuine concern and which exaggerate to appear informed. These details matter. Discernment is survival. The noon bell tolls, signaling a brief lull in activity. You take a moment to step into the storeroom, checking supplies, sacks of flour, barrels of salted meat, dried herbs, and wheels of cheese. Inventory is both a science and an art. It ensures that the illusion of abundance is maintained even during scarcity. You tally quantities mentally, noting what must be rationed, what can be offered generously, and what requires replenishment. In a world where fortunes rise and fall with the seasons, foresight is a rare and precious commodity. Returning to the main hall, you observe the patrons once more. A young couple shares a quiet breakfast, hands intertwined, their conversation punctuated by laughter and concern. A group of traveling minstrels tune instruments, preparing to perform later in the day. Every person, every interaction, adds texture to the tapestry of the tavern. You move among them with fluid precision, offering service, subtly guiding interactions, ensuring that the day remains balanced between comfort and order. Afternoon brings new visitors. A weary night seeking a brief respite. A pair of merchants negotiating the price of rare spices. A small troupe of performers who will entertain after the evening meal. You accommodate each with care, noting their mannerisms, listening to the rhythm of their speech, and watching the subtle cues of tension or relaxation. Your tavern is more than food and drink. It is a repository of human nature, a place where emotion and circumstance converge. By late afternoon, the bard begins to play again, his melody weaving through the conversations like a ribbon of color threading through gray stone. Patrons relax, stories are shared, and the tension of the day softens under the spell of music. Yet you remain alert, eyes scanning the hall, hand resting lightly near the dagger tucked beneath your belt, not for aggression, but for reassurance. Vigilance is constant, even amidst joy and music. As dusk approaches, lanterns are lit, casting warm, flickering light across the tables and beams. The tavern transitions from day's activity to night's intimacy, shadows deepening, voices softening, and movement slowing. You make a final round, checking doors, shutters, and the hearth, ensuring that the tavern remains a safe haven for all who dwell within its walls tonight. Sitting for a moment, a cup of ale in hand, you reflect on the rhythm of the day, the delicate balance between nourishment and observation, between service and strategy, between warmth and caution. Your tavern is a microcosm of the world outside, full of stories, conflicts, hopes, and fears. And you, its vigilant steward, must navigate each with patience, wisdom, and care. The night will come again, and with it, new challenges, new faces, and new stories. But for now, the tavern is alive in its quiet, structured harmony, a place where the ordinary and extraordinary converge, where watchful eye ensures that life continues under your careful guidance. The tavern begins the late afternoon in its familiar rhythm. The hearth burns steadily, casting flickering shadows over the worn wooden tables, the scent of stew and baked bread filling the air. The innkeeper moves among the guests with measured steps, checking mugs, adjusting seats, and offering small gestures of hospitality that conceal a constant vigilance. Today, however, an unfamiliar tension hums beneath the usual warmth. It is subtle at first, a glance too long from a stranger, a whisper that pauses mid-sentence, the faint rustle of a cloak where no wind stirs. The first sign of trouble arrives quietly. A merchant, his cloak dark and heavy, bursts through the door, rainwater dripping onto the stone floor. His eyes are wide, scanning the room, and his voice trembles as he calls out, "Bandits, on the northern road, 3 leagues from here. They've taken the caravan." Gasps ripple through the tavern. The farmers clutch their belongings tighter. Travelers exchange nervous looks, and even the bard pauses, tuning his lute-frozen mid-note. You step forward calmly, your voice carrying over the murmurs. Everyone remain seated and stay calm. Close the doors and ensure the shutters are secure. Your hands move almost automatically, checking the locks and reinforcing the doors, your mind already calculating the potential danger. The tavern is both refuge and trap. In this space, you must maintain control, for panic spreads faster than fire. A group of villagers huddles in a corner, whispering rumors of previous raids and lost livestock. You note each face carefully, who is anxious, who exaggerates, who might be hiding their own motives. Information is currency, and now it could mean the difference between safety and chaos. The merchant paces near the hearth, wringing his hands, recounting the route and the danger to the caravan. You listen intently, storing every detail. The roads are perilous, bandits are opportunistic, and your village sits precariously in the path of both fortune and misfortune. As the night deepens, another unexpected element arrives. A traveler, shrouded in mud and torn garments, stumbles through the door. His cloak is ripped, his boots caked with mire, and his eyes carry the haunted look of one who has narrowly escaped death. "Please, I need shelter," he gasps, collapsing onto the stone floor. The innkeeper's instincts surge. Hospitality is a duty, yet danger may follow the desperate. You quickly assess the situation. He carries nothing threatening, yet the state of his clothing and urgency suggest pursuit. You guide him to a corner table, offering warm broth and a blanket. As he eats, murmurs spread through the room. Travelers and villagers alike speculate. Why did he flee? And from whom? The bard, sensing the tension, begins a soft melody, a thread of music meant to soothe frayed nerves. Yet the air remains charged, each shadow seeming to twitch with potential threat. Outside, the wind rises, carrying the distant echo of hooves on cobblestones. Your heart tightens. Bandits, or perhaps other travelers. You cannot be certain. The tavern has become a nexus of uncertainty. It holds the calm of hearth and home, yet teeters on the edge of chaos. Every decision you make now must be precise. Too lax, and danger may enter. Too strict, and fear will unravel the fragile trust of your patrons. The night continues, punctuated by sudden knocks at the door. Each arrival tests your vigilance. A child lost from a neighboring farm, a merchant seeking refuge from a storm, and finally, a small group of armed guards seeking shelter. Their appearance adds both relief and tension. Protection is welcome, yet the presence of weapons in your hall shifts the dynamics. Conversations grow quieter, glances more careful, and every action is measured. By midnight, the storm outside intensifies. Rain lashes against the windows, wind moans through the beams, and the hearth's warmth becomes the sole anchor against the chaos of the night. You move among the guests, checking fires, replenishing drinks, ensuring that no panic rises. The innkeeper's role is no longer mere hospitality. It is mediation, protection, and sometimes subtle control. You are the pivot upon which the night balances. A sudden crash from the storeroom draws your attention. Rushing forward, you find a stack of barrels toppled by the wind leaking through a poorly secured window. Spilled ale soaks the floor, sending a small group of patrons stumbling. Relief washes over you. They are unharmed, but the moment reminds you of fragility. The smallest lapse can escalate into disaster in a space built of timber and trust. You move swiftly, righting barrels, mopping the spill, and offering reassurances, even as your mind catalogs how future nights might avoid similar hazards. Finally, as the storm eases and the village sleeps fitfully beyond the tavern walls, you sit by the hearth, exhausted yet vigilant. Tonight has tested your patience, judgment, and endurance. You have navigated fear, sheltered the desperate, maintained calm, and observed with careful attention. The tavern is alive with the echoes of the night's drama. Stories, anxieties, relief, and fleeting moments of comfort all interwoven beneath its beams. In these long hours, you understand once more the delicate equilibrium of your domain. It is a place of warmth and danger, of respite and responsibility. You, the innkeeper, stand at the center, orchestrating survival with calm precision, aware that tomorrow will bring new faces, new challenges, and inevitably, new stories to safeguard. The night has passed, but its lessons endure, etched into your mind and the walls of the tavern alike. Dawn breaks slowly over the village, painting the sky with ribbons of pale gold and soft rose. The storm has passed, leaving the world damp and shimmering. Raindrops cling to the timbered roofs, puddles reflect the morning light, and the faint mist from the river drifts across the cobbled lanes. Inside the tavern, a calm has returned, almost surreal after the tension of the previous night. The innkeeper moves through the hall, now quiet and still, running a hand along polished tables, straightening chairs, and checking the hearth. The fire has died to a low smolder, its warmth faint but comforting. A gentle sigh escapes. You have survived another night, guided travelers safely, managed crises, and preserved the fragile order that defines this space. The weight of vigilance eases slightly, replaced by the subtle satisfaction of a job well done. Morning guests begin to trickle in. A farmer seeking breakfast before heading to the fields, a merchant wanting to dry goods after the storm, and a few travelers resuming their journeys. Their laughter and light chatter fill the hall, a soft counterpoint to the tension that had gripped it only hours before. Each face carries a story, a fragment of the world outside your walls, and you observe with careful eyes, noting relief, fatigue, and renewed hope. You serve porridge and bread, refill mugs, and listen to murmurs. The traveling merchant recounts the events of last night, his story punctuated with exaggeration and awe. The hooded traveler sits quietly, now warmed and fed, and offers a faint smile of gratitude. Even the bard resumes his music, his notes gentle, weaving a sense of calm and continuity through the space. As the day unfolds, you take a moment to step behind the counter, gaze out the window, and breathe. The village glows under the pale morning sun, the streets still wet but alive with movement. Carts trundle along, animals are tended, and villagers resume their routines. It is a world both ordinary and miraculous, and the tavern remains its constant, a microcosm of life's rhythms, hazards, and stories. You walk to the storeroom, taking stock of supplies, the spilled ale, the toppled barrels, the chaos of the night. All are now manageable, contained, and lessons recorded in memory. Planning for future crises, rationing provisions, and maintaining readiness are as much a part of your day as serving food and drink. Vigilance, after all, is not confined to darkness. It stretches into every hour, every decision, every careful interaction. By late morning, a gentle calm settles over the tavern. Patrons sit quietly, some in conversation, others simply savoring warmth and safety. The innkeeper finally allows a brief pause, sitting at a corner table with a small cup of ale. The weight of responsibility remains, but it is softened by the knowledge that your efforts shape the lives of countless people, offering not only nourishment but sanctuary. You reflect on the tapestry of the night. Fear, chaos, courage, and quiet heroism all intertwined. Each moment, each choice, has contributed to the delicate balance that allows life within these walls to continue. You understand now that the tavern is more than a business. It is a vessel for stories, a haven for travelers, and a place where the world's fragility and resilience coexist. As afternoon approaches, the sun climbs higher, warming the hall. The hearth glows faintly once more, and the tavern hums with the rhythm of life. You move among the tables, serving, observing, and guiding, fully aware that each day brings new challenges, new faces, and new stories. But for this moment, the storm has passed, the danger receded, and the tavern stands as it always does, a beacon of warmth, vigilance, and continuity in a world of uncertainty. Sitting quietly, you sip the ale, letting the flavors and the sense of accomplishment wash over you. Life here is neither simple nor easy, but it is meaningful, rich in responsibility, humanity, and connection. And as the sun filters through the windows, illuminating every corner of the tavern, you know that tomorrow the cycle will begin anew, and you, as ever, will be ready.